Ancient folks weren't just building pyramids and pondering philosophy, Their downtime? Let's just say Netflix and chill wasn't an option, so they got creative. We're diving into 33 ways they actually had fun, from divinely mandated drunkenness to some seriously bizarre party games. Forget dusty textbooks. This is the weird, wild, and wonderfully absurd leisure time of our ancestors. Prepare for some historical WTF moments. 1. All right, let's venture into a darker but undeniably real corner of ancient entertainment, public punishments and executions. Yes, as grim as it sounds, for many cultures, watching someone get flogged, branded, or, meet a rather gruesome end in the town square was a legitimate spectator event. Forget Netflix true crime documentaries. This was live, unfiltered, and horrifyingly up close. Crowds would gather, sometimes in a festive atmosphere, complete with food vendors and opportunistic pickpockets, to witness the state dole out its brutal justice. It served as a grim warning, sure, but for many, it was also a source of morbid fascination and a communal, if deeply unsettling, experience. Imagine families packing a lunch to go watch a hanging, or people jostling for a better view of a particularly notorious criminal's final moments. It's a chilling reminder that what constitutes fun can be terrifyingly relative, and that the line between public order and public spectacle was often incredibly, disturbingly blurred. 2. Forget your local poetry slam. The Vikings invented flighting, and it was basically verbal MMA with more mead and a higher chance of actual axe-related follow-up. Picture this. Norsemen, probably smelling faintly of fermented honey and rage, just absolutely demolishing each other's entire existence with insults so creatively vile they'd make a drill sergeant weep. This wasn't your gentle, yo mama joke. Oh no, this was a full-scale rhyming takedown of your honor, your ancestors back to the primordial ooze, and your questionable beard grooming, all set to a catchy, insulting rhythm. The loser? Sometimes they just slunk off in disgrace, their ego in tatters. Other times, well, their flighting career and possibly their life came to an abrupt and messy end. Imagine dropping a diss track so potent it starts an actual sword fight. That's the kind of energy we're dealing with here. Utterly brutal. 3. All right, imagine this scenario. You're at a Greek party, probably wearing something breezy and flammable, half-cut unquestionable wine, and your main goal is to hurl the dregs of your cup across the room, aiming for a metal disc, all while bellowing the name of the person you fancy. Welcome to Kotobos, ancient Greece's premier dumb party game for the sophisticatedly smashed. Miss your shot? Prepare for eternal shame and a very sticky floor. Nail it? You might win affection, bragging rights, or just another cup of that god-awful wine. This was essentially beer pong's great-great-grandpappy, except it involved more projectile sludge and a higher risk of pottery-related injuries. Can you just picture Socrates, eyes narrowed in concentration, absolutely nailing a shot and then attempting a dignified wine-fueled high-five with Plato? Pure, unadulterated toga-clad chaos. Zero regrets, probably. 4. You reckon ancient Greek theater was all serious faces and chin-stroking contemplation of the human condition? Oh, you sweet, naive soul. Try picturing this. Highly respected actors parading around the stage sporting gigantic, hilariously unconvincing phallic props, delivering fart jokes that would make a 14-year-old boy keel over while the audience, instead of a polite golf clap, enthusiastically chucks stale bread and miscellaneous refuse at them. Yes, that was literally a thing. Aristophanes' plays weren't just plays, they were a glorious, chaotic stew of biting political commentary, unapologetic butt humor, and vigorous audience participation that would give a modern health and safety inspector a fatal aneurysm. People didn't just spectate, they screamed, they booed, they rioted. It was less a refined evening of dramatic arts, and more an ancient citywide open mic night hosted by lunatics in a very, very weird frat house. 5. The Romans looked at the magnificent, awe-inspiring Colosseum and collectively declared, needs more water, and ships, and an absolutely obscene quantity of people dying horribly for our amusement. So what did they do? They flooded the entire freaking arena. or purpose-built basins and forced thousands of condemned prisoners and captives of war to enact full-scale naval battles. Namakiai, if you want to be fancy. It was like Pirates of the Caribbean, but if it was a snuff film directed by a particularly unhinged emperor with a serious budget. Real ships, real weapons, real people really drowning. The emperor would be lounging in his imperial box, probably picking at some figs, casually observing the carnage and saying, yes, quite the spectacle. Look at that fellow gurgle. This wasn't sport. It was state-sponsored, meticulously choreographed mass murder as entertainment. If you got the cheap seats, you probably went home with a complimentary splash of someone else's bodily fluids. 6. Apparently, ancient Chinese nobles got so mind-numbingly bored with their riches and power that they decided the next big spectator sport would be cricket fighting. No, I'm not being metaphorical. I mean actual, tiny, six-legged insects, probably with surprisingly fierce mandibles, being pitted against each other in miniature arenas, while grown men in exquisite silk robes screamed things like, "Finish him, tiny death dealer," as if they were at a heavyweight boxing match. They built elaborate little fighting pits, employed dedicated cricket trainers, and probably had heated debates about cricket dietary supplements. Some crickets achieved genuine celebrity status, complete with devoted fan followings and bitter rivalries. Imagine explaining to your financial advisor that you've wagered the family fortune on a 2-gram arthropod named General Crunch. And if your champion cricket lost? Well, let's just say that night soup probably had an extra, slightly crunchy ingredient. It was bizarre, strangely adorable, and horrifyingly serious all at once. 7. The ancient Egyptian Festival of Drunkenness. The name alone promises a good time, right? But oh, it was so much more magnificently unhinged than you can possibly imagine. Legend has it that the ferocious lion goddess Sekhmet was on a divine bender, ready to annihilate all of humankind, until some quick-thinking deity got her absolutely, royally plastered on beer cunningly dyed red to resemble blood. She passed out, humanity was saved. Hallelujah. So, naturally, to commemorate this and ensure she didn't wake up with a godly hangover and finish the job, the Egyptians threw an annual, city-wide blackout drunk rager. Your sacred duty to save the world? Get hammered. Priests would be solemnly officiating while ordinary citizens were doing keg stands in the name of divine mercy. If you weren't face down in a papyrus bush by sunset, were you even truly committed to planetary salvation? It was religion meets a catastrophic spring break, with the fate of everything at stake. 8. Gladiators. Forget your average sweaty dude with a pointy stick. These guys were the Roman Empire's ultimate rock stars, oiled up, muscle-bound, and probably going to die soon celebrities. The public? Utterly obsessed. We're talking steamy fan fiction that'd make modern romance authors blush, adoring graffiti on every street corner, and a booming merchandise market that included, get this, perfumes allegedly made from gladiator sweat and arena dirt snapped up by wealthy socialites. Yes, really, their stands were next-level intense. If their favorite fighter bit the dust, some fans wouldn't just sob, they'd commission elaborate curse tablets to supernaturally wreck the victor's life. Because, you know, booing is for amateurs. 9. And speaking of elite entertainment that devolved into glorious, drunken chaos, let's discuss Greek symposiums. These weren't your polite academic seminars with lukewarm coffee and dry biscuits. Oh no, these were essentially all-male, high-end frat parties masquerading as intellectual gatherings. Sure, the evening might kick off with someone eloquently quoting Plato or debating the abstract nature of virtue. But fast forward 5 craters of potent wine, and the vibe inevitably shifted to a bewildering free-for-all of competitive riddle-solving, insult-hurling poetry slams, off-key drunken sing-alongs, and quite possibly some dude attempting to juggle figs using only the power of his thighs. Scantily clad professional dancers provided the visual entertainment. Philosophers doing body shots off each other? Given the context, it's highly probable. They even had a drinking game where failure to improvise a witty verse on command resulted in immediate and forceful chugging. Imagine a TED Talk that slowly, beautifully, and inevitably transforms into Animal House, but with togas. 10. Try to imagine if Christmas, April Fool's Day, and a slightly less homicidal version of the Purge got together, had a wild weekend, and produced a week-long festival baby. That, my friends, is a rough approximation of the Roman festival of Saturnalia. For one glorious, utterly chaotic week in the bleak midwinter of December, the entire rigid Roman social structure went completely haywire and did a celebratory backflip. Slaves became masters, often being served meals by their actual owners, who, in turn, might be prancing about in ridiculous, ill-fitting costumes, acting like total buffoons. Gambling, usually a big no-no, was suddenly legal and enthusiastically practiced in public squares. Pretty much everyone, from stern-faced senators to lowly street urchins, collectively lost their marbles in a frenzy of feasting, drinking, and general uninhibited chaos. Your normally uptight boss might serve you lunch while wearing a jester's hat as you drunkenly called him a donkey. It was truly a sight to behold. 11. The Ancient Olympics. Forget the solemn dignity and inspiring sportsmanship you see on TV today. This was more like a sun-drenched festival of naked, sweaty madness with a rulebook apparently written by a committee of slightly tipsy satyrs. Athletes competed entirely, gloriously, and often uncomfortably in the buff. Because, according to ancient wisdom, clothing apparently created too much wind resistance. Or maybe they just really enjoyed communal exhibitionism. One particularly grueling race, the hoplitodromos, involved sprinting a considerable distance while weighed down by a full set of heavy bronze armor, like some kind of bizarre, ancient Greek military-themed CrossFit nightmare. And women. If you were a married woman, you weren't even allowed to watch the games, under penalty of being chucked off a cliff. Unmarried girls, however? Totally cool. Come on in and enjoy the view of all the naked dudes. Because ancient logic is its own special kind of pretzel. 12. Assyrian kings, bless their deeply insecure royal hearts, were absolutely desperate to project an image of awe-inspiring bravery and rugged, lion-wrestling manliness. So they staged these grand theatrical lion hunts, with a few, shall we say, minor behind-the-scenes adjustments to ensure the king always came out looking like a total hero. The lions, you see, were often conveniently pre-weakened, sometimes declawed or defanged, and occasionally even discreetly tethered or confined to a relatively small enclosure. The king would then majestically strut in, dramatically hurl a spear at a creature that was probably more confused and mildly annoyed than genuinely ferocious, and the assembled sycophants would erupt in thunderous, pre-rehearsed applause as if he'd just single-handedly slain a dragon. Meanwhile, a crack team of heavily armed royal guards with loaded crossbows stood just out of frame, ready to intervene if the fearsome wild beast forgot its role in the royal PR charade. These weren't hunts. They were elaborately choreographed. Bloody photo opportunities for the royal Instagram feed, Assyrian style. 13. You think modern sports fans get a bit too worked up with their foam fingers and aggressive heckling? Ancient Roman spectators took their fanatical devotion to a whole new and frankly rather terrifying supernatural dimension. These folks were out there commissioning honest-to-goodness curse tablets, defixiones if you want the fancy term, meticulously inscribed on thin sheets of lead, designed to hex the living daylights out of the opponents of their favorite chariot racing teams. I am not making this up. These charming little imprecations would invoke various chthonic deities and malevolent spirits, earnestly requesting all manner of dreadful misfortunes to befall the rival charioteers and their unfortunate horses. Oh, mighty Pluto, ruler of the underworld, please ensure that Flavius the Blue's chariot wheels explode spectacularly. His horses develop sudden, uncontrollable diarrhea, and he faceplants into a pile of dung before the cheering masses. That general sort of delightful sentiment, they'd then secretly bury these cursed scrolls near the racetrack or in graveyards for maximum demonic mojo. 14. Public baths in ancient Rome. Not just for a quick splash, oh no. These were the pulsating, steamy, and slightly grimy social epicenters of the empire. Think your local gym, a gossip-fueled coffee shop, and a very awkward Tinder meetup all rolled into one sprawling, marble-lined complex. You didn't just get clean, you got the latest dirt, flexed your oiled physique, possibly contracted a new fungal friend, and maybe even stumbled upon some political intrigue. Grand bathhouses were miniature cities with food courts, libraries, and even spies because, surprise, people say the dumbest, most compromising things when they're naked, sweaty, and think no one important is listening. 15. Let's just pause for a moment to collectively boggle at the sheer audacity and almost supernatural spinal flexibility of ancient acrobats, especially the female performers who were all the rage at elite Egyptian parties. These weren't your standard-issue gymnasts doing a few cartwheels. These individuals were human pretzels, contorting their bodies into shapes that would make a yoga master weep, all while balancing precariously on top of pottery. Or sometimes, for reasons that defy modern comprehension, on the backs of live, and presumably very bewildered lions, or even occasionally on the heads of extremely drunk and unsteady aristocrats. Some of the poses depicted in ancient art make you seriously wonder if their bones were made of particularly pliable rubber bands. Add to this the fact that they were usually performing in outfits that left very little to the imagination, and their audience was typically several goblets deep into the evening's supply of potent wine. And voila, you have the original, highly dangerous Cirque du WTF. 16. Viking feasts. Forget your polite dinner parties. Viking feasts were epic, blood alcohol-fueled endurance tests where boasting, competitive meat gorging, and spontaneous furniture demolition were the main events. Picture a vast, smoke-filled long hall crammed with burly, bearded Vikings bellowing at volumes that could curdle milk, while someone inevitably tries to outdrink the village blacksmith, a fatal error, usually. Others are locked in spittle-flecked debates about who punched a bear with more style. Mead, their beloved honey wine, flowed like a biblical flood, turning storytelling into shouting matches punctuated by fists hitting tables or occasionally jaws. If you were still conscious by sunrise, you were basically a god. Pure, unadulterated, axe-swinging chaos with a side of roasted boar. 17. Ancient knucklebone gambling. Think your weekly poker night gets intense? Ancient folks casually tossed polished animal knucklebones, astragali, as if their entire fortune, future happiness, and immortal soul depended on it. These weren't balanced casino dice. These were literal sheep or goat ankle bones, smoothed and sometimes weighted, fueling everything from kids' games to life-destroying adult gambling addictions that'd shame a modern casino whale. People wagered fortunes, livestock, clothes, food, and when truly desperate, even family members, all on the random bounce of deceased ungulate anatomy. Find true love? Ask the goat bone. Want to show off your reckless abandon? Yell about it in a public bathhouse, surrounded by sweaty senators probably losing their tunics on a bad roll. 18. Now, allow me to introduce you to an ancient Greek game that sounds like it was invented by a committee of particularly mischievous toddlers who had just discovered the concept of centrifugal force and temporary blindness. Ephedrismos. The rules were deceptively simple, yet brimming with the potential for hilarious disaster. One unfortunate participant, often a child or a very trusting young adult, would clamber onto another's back. The carrier would then be blindfolded, spun around like a confused helicopter until thoroughly disoriented, and then tasked with the noble objective of locating and touching a designated stone or marker with their hand, all while still carrying their human backpack. That's basically it. Except, of course, they were also being loudly heckled, jeered at, and encouraged by a crowd of probably highly amused and slightly intoxicated spectators, and they were undoubtedly dizzy, sweating profusely, and approximately 5 seconds away from a spectacular faceplant onto a conveniently placed pointy rock or an unsuspecting farm animal. Historians delicately suggest it was about developing coordination and trust. We suspect it was more about, let's see who breaks their nose first. 19. Persian polo, or chavgan as it was known to its undoubtedly bruised and battered practitioners, was less of a refined, leisurely pastime for the idle rich and more akin to organized high-speed royal mayhem on horseback, with a shockingly high probability of sustaining grievous bodily harm. Players, often nobles, or even members of the royal family who clearly had a death wish, would gallop at terrifying speeds across a vast, dusty field, aggressively whacking a small wooden ball with long, unwieldy mallets, all while desperately trying not to get trampled by their own horse, unseated by an opponent's aggressive shoulder barge, or inadvertently brained by a stray mallet swing. Protective headgear? Apparently, that was for wimps. The mallets themselves were hefty, essentially weaponized sticks capable of inflicting serious damage. And the horses? They were just as fiercely competitive and probably equally bewildered by the entire violent charade. It was like watching a particularly chaotic medieval traffic accident unfold in glorious, dangerous real-time, but with more shouting and Persian. Kings sponsored teams, and injuries weren't just common. They were practically a mandatory souvenir. 20. If you thought the standard gladiator versus gladiator shows at the Colosseum were a tad on the brutal side, then please, secure your toga and hold on to your sandals, because the Roman venaciones, or staged animal hunts, made those look like a gentle, G-rated warm-up act. These were colossal public spectacles of organized slaughter, featuring elaborate animal-on-animal combat, or, more frequently and crowd-pleasingly, animal-on-human battles staged within the blood-soaked confines of the grand arenas. Imagine lions being pitted against enraged elephants, bears being forced to fight leopards, and sometimes, just to shake things up, the organizers would simply release 40 highly agitated ostriches into the arena and see what delightful chaos ensues. The crowd, naturally, would be roaring with unrestrained glee, as if they were at a particularly exciting family picnic, except the clowns were ravenous tigers and the party favors were dismembered limbs. Specially trained and often very unfortunate hunters, called bestiarii, were frequently tossed into the arena with minimal weaponry and maximum encouragement from the bloodthirsty spectators to provide a thrilling, if often short-lived, spectacle of man versus beast. 21. Lucian of Samosata. Bow down to this 2nd century Greek writer, the OG sci-fi satirist who was clearly penning his masterpieces while hilariously baked on something otherworldly. His magnum opus, audaciously titled A True Story, which is anything but, casually recounts voyages to the actual moon. There, he gets tangled in an intergalactic war between sun and moon empires, featuring giant celestial spiders and sentient mushroom soldiers because, obviously. Then, he's swallowed whole by a city-sized space whale, inside which a fully functioning human civilization just exists. Yes, this was ancient literature, a giant, sarcastic middle finger to other authors claiming their equally wild travelogues were fact. The man was a legend, a troll, and a genius, probably all before breakfast. 22. Roman street puppet shows. Wandering a dusty Roman street, you spot a puppet show. Quaint? Morally uplifting for kids? Oh, you gloriously wrong soul. These weren't sweet, felt hand puppets. Roman street puppet shows were often grotesque, raunchy, slapstick beatdowns, complete with comically oversized puppet genitals, simulated fart effects, possibly bean-powered, and graphic wooden decapitations. The delighted audience for this unhinged wooden carnage? Kids howling with laughter, adults laughing even harder. These lewd little puppets screamed biting political satire that'd get a modern comedian instantly canceled, or just screamed because their puppet heads were being violently knocked off. Pure, unadulterated, string-pulled mayhem. 23. Scythian warriors, those formidable nomadic horsemen of the Eurasian steppes, renowned for their archery skills and general ferocity, had a particular post-battle tradition that really takes the concept of flexing on your defeated enemies to a whole new and frankly quite macabre level of commitment. If they managed to slay a particularly impressive or high-ranking adversary in the heat of battle, they wouldn't just take a souvenir. They would meticulously prepare the vanquished foe's skull and transform it into a literal, functional drinking cup. Yes, you read that correctly. They'd clean it out, sometimes line it with gleaming gold or other precious metals for a bit of bling, and then proceed to get absolutely roaringly hammered out of it, presumably while loudly regaling their comrades with embellished tales of the heroic kill that provided their unique new piece of grisly tableware. A toast, my friends, to Boris, whose surprisingly roomy cranium now holds my finest fermented mare's milk. It was equal parts a gruesome victory ritual, a status symbol, and a chilling form of psychological warfare. 24. So, you snag an invite to Emperor Elagabalus's dinner bash. You're probably expecting, food, maybe some fancy grapes. Instead, congratulations, your door prize is 10 freshly deceased rats. Yeah, this dude made shock jocks look like kindergarten teachers. One night, just for a laugh, he decided to introduce live, writhing snakes to his dinner guests, right as dessert was served. Because why not? Another time, he opted for a more fragrant form of homicide by suffocating attendees under literal tons of flower petals. Imagine the sheer terror of receiving that invitation. Dearest friend, please join me for an evening of potential floral asphyxiation. He also found it utterly hilarious to serve food meticulously sculpted to resemble various human body parts. Elagabalus didn't host banquets. He curated interactive psychological horror shows with an appetizer course. Guests never knew if they'd leave feeling satisfied or just cease to exist. What a party planner. 25. Baishi, the Chinese 100 entertainments. Imagine a colossal, open-air sensory nuclear bomb where hundreds of mind-boggling, often lethal, acts exploded simultaneously. Gravity-defying jugglers tossed flaming torches like tennis balls, acrobats contorted into human pretzels that'd shame an octopus, dancers swirled in vibrant silks, and fearless sword swallowers tickled their tonsils with steel. Somewhere, an entertainer balanced a pyramid of live, possibly flaming, and definitely bewildered goats on his head. This Han Dynasty mega show was a circus, music festival, martial arts tournament, and a deranged ninja warrior audition, all hurled into a cultural blender and poured into an arena. Pure, unadulterated, how is anyone still alive? Spectacle. 26. Forget your quiet, contemplative Tuesday night chess club, where the most exciting thing that happens is when someone accidentally knocks over their king. Chaturanga, the ancient Indian four-player precursor to modern chess, was less a gentle board game and more a full-blown, ruthlessly strategic war simulator that made a game of Risk look like a friendly, non-threatening round of Candyland. Each of the four players commanded a diverse and powerful army of game pieces representing elephants, chariots, infantry, and cavalry, all maneuvering with deadly intent across the gridded board with the singular, overarching goal of utterly and decisively crushing their opponents while maintaining the thin, polite fiction that it was just a game. Strategies were complex, devious, and often breathtakingly ruthless. Alliances between players were invariably temporary, fragile, and designed to be treacherously broken at the most opportune moment. And much like its modern descendant, Monopoly, it probably led to the swift, brutal, and irreparable destruction of countless friendships, and possibly even a few strained marriages. Played by kings, warriors, and presumably some very intense, bespectacled nerds in elaborate robes, this game was essentially ancient military cosplay enacted on a conveniently portable battlefield. 27. Forget iPads. Ancient Greek kids invented chaotic outdoor fun that'd give helicopter parents a heart attack. Picture pint-sized Athenians in high-stakes hide-and-seek among temple columns, where tripping over sacred offerings or bumping grumpy philosophers was a real hazard. Then the trochus, hoop, not for gentle rolling. They'd ferociously whack these wooden or metal hoops with sticks, racing them through crowded agoras, terrorizing merchants in a shin-bruising high-speed derby of doom. Imagine tiny future Olympians, fueled by honey cakes, screeching with delight as they clotheslined a politician with a rogue hoop. It wasn't just play, it was unsupervised, toga-clad anarchy with a high chance of scraped knees, loud arguments over made-up rules, and meltdowns heard to Olympus. Utter glorious chaos. 28. Pancration. Let's have a terrified moment for Pancration, the most unhinged, terrifyingly brutal Olympic event conceived by clearly deranged minds. Imagine savage bare-knuckle boxing, excruciating submission wrestling, and a desperate, eye-gouging, groin-kicking street fight you'd find behind a shady tavern at 3 a.m., all rolled into one. No gloves, few rules, though biting and eye-gouging were technically frowned upon, which naturally meant everyone did it anyway. Full contact, primal chaos where highly trained men tried to maim or kill each other for cheering, naked, probably drunk crowds. One famous match ended with a competitor dying from a chokehold, but still winning posthumously because his opponent broke the dead guy's toe just before and the hero hadn't tapped. That's commitment. Or insanity? Probably both. 29. Minoan bull leaping. Ever just nodded along to bull leaping, pretending you got it? Let me enlighten you. The Minoans of Crete, around 2000 BCE, thought sprinting at a charging furious bull, grabbing its razor-sharp horns, and acrobatically vaulting over its massive back was peak entertainment. Ideally, these possibly suicidal young daredevils landed gracefully, like caffeinated Olympic gymnasts who'd mainlined Red Bull and lost their survival instinct. Sound like a recipe for instant messy disaster? We have vibrant frescoes depicting exactly this bewildering activity. Was it a religious ritual? A lethal coming-of-age trial? Or just Tuesday afternoon for adrenaline junkies with a death wish? Whatever it was, it makes modern extreme sports look like a knitting circle. 30. Celtic Heroes Portion. At ancient Celtic feasts, the generously portioned roasted meat wasn't just dinner. It was a catalyst for a potential death match. The coveted Heroes Portion, the biggest, juiciest cut, went to the most undeniably badass warrior present. And who decided who was most badass among a hall full of armed, probably drunk Celts? Well, that was often settled on the spot via loud boasts, feats of strength, or more decisively, fists, swords, axes, and aggressive, spittle-flecked yelling. Disagreements over this meaty honor frequently escalated into full-blown, potentially fatal duels right there in the dining hall, amidst overturned tables and scrambling lesser warriors. Pass the salt, and my axe was probably a common request. 31. Ancient Bards. Think storytelling is just for sleepy kids? Oh, you spectacularly wrong, sweet summer child. Ancient bards were the original Netflix, HBO, Spotify, and a dash of WWE, all rolled into one charismatic, alarmingly energetic, musically gifted human package. Their live, on-demand shows featured mind-boggling epic tales recited from memory, energetic, and possibly suggestive song and dance, a sprinkle of hilariously crude jokes, and on rowdy, alcohol-fueled nights, maybe a spontaneous duel over a disputed lyric or a poorly received insult. These wandering pros memorized hours of epics, battle sagas, and scathing satirical roasts. They weren't just entertainers, they were walking, talking, occasionally brawling cultural hard drives. 32. Olamalistli, Mesoamerican ball game. So your pickup game is intense? Cute. Ancient Mesoamericans played Olamalistli, a high-stakes spectacle with cosmic significance. Picture imposing stone courts and a solid 9-pound rubber ball. Not a Nerf toy, this thing could cause serious ouchies. Teams had to propel this formidable sphere through a tiny stone hoop using only hips, thighs, or maybe an elbow. The skill was immense, the stakes astronomically high, often intertwined with sacred rituals where the line between glory and, well, a rather final offering was perilously thin. This wasn't your neighborhood scrimmage. It was life, death, and the cosmos played out with a very bouncy, very dangerous ball. Talk about pressure. About 33. Senet, Egyptian game of the afterlife. Finally, let's descend into the underworld of ancient gaming with Senet, the Egyptian board game that could literally determine your eternal soul's fate. This wasn't a casual pastime for a lazy Nile afternoon. Oh no, Egyptians believed playing Senet was a terrifying test run for your perilous journey through the Duat, their mysterious underworld. Each square on the decorated board represented a stage, challenge, or divine encounter, potentially filled with traps by malevolent spirits, menacing demons, and moral dilemmas. Win against your opponent, or fate itself. You might secure safe passage to Aru, the blissful Egyptian paradise. Lose badly? You risked eternal doom, fiery condemnation, and maybe being devoured by Ammit, the terrifying crocodile-headed, lion-bodied, hippo-hindquartered soul-eater. So yeah, no pressure at all, just your immortal soul on the line. So yeah, when you thought ancient people were all wisdom, pyramids, and deep thoughts, turns out they were out here chugging wine to stop the apocalypse, training beetles for death matches, and roasting each other in freestyle poetry battles. Now it's your turn. Which of these ancient entertainments would you actually try? And which one sounds like a straight-up nightmare from a drunk god? Tell us in the comments. Defend your choice. Argue. Fight like it's Saturnalia. And if you made it this far, smash that like, hit subscribe, and we promise, no live snakes at your next dinner party. Probably.